Imagine walking into battle carrying a weapon so terrifying that the enemy would rather die than surrender to you. Now imagine knowing that if you carried that weapon, you had less than a 1 in 10 chance of surviving the battle. This was the fate of the flamethrower operators on Iwo Jima. Out of 380 flamethrower operators deployed on Iwo Jima, only 18 walked off that island alive. Their life expectancy on the battlefield was just 4 minutes. 4 minutes. They were feared as the deadliest weapon the U.S. Marines had, and at the same time, pitied as the most vulnerable. But their story is far more horrific than most people realize, and today, you're about to understand why. When people talk about the Pacific War, names like Guadalcanal or Okinawa usually come up, but Iwo Jima was a fight of a completely different kind. On the map, it was just a tiny patch of volcanic rock, barely 8 square miles wide, floating in the middle of the Pacific between the Marianas and mainland Japan. Yet in 1945, this speck of land became one of the most valuable pieces of territory in the entire Second World War. The Americans wanted it desperately because of its location. Long-range B-29 bombers were flying from the Marianas to hammer targets in Japan, and their flight path took them directly over Iwo Jima. That meant Japanese radar and fighter aircraft stationed on the island could track, intercept, and slaughter the bombers mid-flight. But if the U.S. could capture it, they would gain a forward base for fighter escorts, a lifeline for emergency landings, and a launch point for shorter bombing runs carrying heavier payloads. The Japanese, of course, knew exactly how critical Iwo Jima was. They had no illusions. They expected the Americans to come, and they prepared for it. But instead of defending the beaches head-on like at Saipan or Tarawa, they studied their past failures and decided to do things differently this time. General Tanamichi Kurabayashi, the man in charge of defending the island, was a seasoned officer who understood the reality. He knew he wasn't going to win. He didn't even expect to survive. His mission was simple: lead the Americans for every inch of ground and delay them long enough to buy Japan more time before the inevitable invasion of the home islands. American intelligence estimated no more than 13,000 Japanese soldiers were hiding on Iwo Jima. In reality, there were closer to 23,000, and they were not sitting in foxholes waiting to be shelled. They were buried deep beneath the island. More than 11 miles of tunnels had been carved through the soft volcanic rock, creating a network of interconnected bunkers, pillboxes, artillery positions, storage rooms, and hidden firing points. Kurabayashi had also pre-measured every inch of the island. Artillery was already zeroed in on the beaches where Americans would land. Firing lanes overlapped and supported each other from multiple angles. There were no traditional front lines. Instead, it was a vast underground fortress with traps and fallback positions everywhere. When the American invasion began on February 19, 1945, they unleashed the standard playbook. Days of naval bombardment and airstrikes rained down on the island. Battleships and cruisers pounded the ground until the coastline looked like nothing could have survived. But in truth, almost nothing had been destroyed. As the first wave of Marines landed, they sank into loose volcanic ash, a black sand that swallowed their boots and bogged down vehicles. Digging for cover was nearly impossible. Still, the landing seemed almost too easy. Hour after hour, wave after wave of Marines poured onto the beaches, and for nearly 60 minutes it was quiet. No gunfire, no resistance, just the eerie silence of an island waiting. Then, Kurabayashi gave the order. All at once, the silence shattered. Machine guns opened from hidden slits. Mortar and artillery, already pre-sighted, rained down with devastating accuracy. Entire clusters of Marines were cut down in seconds. With no cover, pinned in the black sand,
the flamethrower became one of the only weapons that could deal with them effectively, but it also came with a heavy price. To understand why using a flamethrower on Iwo Jima was such a nightmare, we need to take a look at how it actually worked.
The Japanese
M2 was a standard flamethrower used by US Marines in World War II, and even
interlocking fire. Grenades and satchel charges could clear some of them, but only temporarily. Again and again, Marines would overrun a position, only for Japanese soldiers to reappear behind them through unseen tunnels. There were no secure areas, no safe ground. Chaos ruled the battlefield, and the biggest menace were the pillboxes, fortified concrete strongholds with firing slits so narrow they were almost invisible until bullets sprayed out of them. They were placed so they could cover each other with overlapping fire. Many were zigzagged inside so even grenades couldn't clear them completely. Some Marines literally walked past them, unaware, until it was too late. There was only one weapon that could truly deal with these fortifications, the flamethrower. But carrying one meant almost certain death. The standard M2 flamethrower weighed about 70 pounds. 2 tanks filled with thickened gasoline, a smaller tank of compressed nitrogen, and a long metal wand with an ignition system at the tip. Its range was about 20 yards. Its total firing time, 7 seconds, 7 seconds of firepower, for the price of your life. That meant a flamethrower operator had to crawl or sprint under heavy fire, get within grenade range of the target, and unleash short bursts to burn the defenders out. And when that jet of fire lit up the battlefield, every Japanese gun instantly locked onto one target, the flamethrower man. If a bullet pierced the fuel tank, the operator would erupt into flames. If captured, they were rarely shown mercy. Japanese soldiers despised flamethrowers, viewing them as demonic. Stories circulated of operators being tortured for days if taken alive. One Marine recalled hearing the screams of a captured flamethrower operator from inside a cave for 2 full days before the sounds stopped. Even for those who survived, the psychological toll was immense. To use a flamethrower meant standing close enough to see, hear, and smell what your weapon did to human beings. Operators sometimes used wet bursts, firing unlit streams of fuel to soak a position, then igniting it all at once. Inside a confined bunker, the temperature would spike to 2,000 degrees in seconds, sucking the oxygen away. Even those not touched by the flame would suffocate almost instantly. The sound was deafening. Operators were trained to hold their breath before firing because the roar of the weapon made it impossible to breathe. Many who survived the battle were haunted for the rest of their lives by the memory of what they had seen and done. Yet despite the horror, the flamethrower was often the only way to clear a position for good. Without it, Marines would be trapped in an endless cycle of clearing, retreating, and being ambushed again. Still, with casualty rates soaring, it was clear a new solution was needed. That's when flame tanks arrived. Modified Sherman tanks, known as M4A3 R3 South, replaced their main cannon with a flamethrower system. From the outside, they looked like regular Shermans until they opened fire. Instead of 7 seconds of fuel, they carried around 300 gallons of thickened gasoline and could unleash streams of fire nearly 100 yards away. These flame tanks operated alongside infantry and regular armor, and while they were far more effective, they also drew the same kind of attention. The second they opened fire, every Japanese gun zeroed in on them, and carrying hundreds of gallons of fuel inside a tank was a nightmare scenario for any crew. Still, these flame tanks proved decisive. They became one of the most feared and effective weapons on Iwo Jima, playing a crucial role in breaking the Japanese fortress and finally capturing the island. But the cost was devastating. Of the 380 flamethrower operators who went into Iwo Jima, only 18 came back alive. They carried the weapon everyone relied on, and everyone feared, the weapon that cleared the way to victory, but demanded almost certain death from the men who used it. That is the story of why 94% of flamethrower operators died on Iwo Jima. And if you'd like to hear more forgotten truths of war, make sure to subscribe to Unspoken History, where we tell the stories history tried to bury.